All right, guys, enough. All right, we're moving into our last and final method for solving. No applause? Nothing on that? Yay! Thanks. I'm not, I like to learn more ways, but we're going to look at the last method today. All right, quadratic formula. We're going to learn the formula and stuff today, so the first learning target to solving using the formula. Tomorrow we're going to focus on the discriminants, which is part of the formula, and what we can kind of do with that. Okay. My advanced class really liked learning the discriminant because it helped them out. They realized how it helps them in other areas. Okay. So help them out with their test, which they have to take today. Their test is today. Yours won't be until next week sometime, probably. What? It'll be one of your early grades next quarter. Yeah. Yeah. That'll set the tone for you. All right. So do you guys know the quadratic formula? No, that's standard form. Thanks. All right. Kind of. All right, guys, what I want to do, though, guys, I want to show you where it came from. In high school, I was always that student was like, why? I raised my hand all the time. Why? Why do we do that? Why does it work? Where did that come from? Like, some of you I know will believe anything I tell you about math, and you're like, okay, you shake your head and just move on. You don't care. Whatever. I know there's probably at least one or two of you in here that probably care where stuff comes from. Okay? I want to show you. Will I ask you to do this for me on a test? No, I will not. Okay? But I want you to, if you can write it down or not write it down, totally up to you, but I do want to show you where it comes from. Okay? So we start with standard form. All right, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We've used that a ton. We're going to complete the square. We've done completing square, right? That's pretty familiar in your head. So what's your first step on completing the square? Add c, or in this case, subtract c. Okay, so we're going to have ax squared plus bx, move the c, so we have negative c. Okay, that was always our first step. What was your next step? Good. Literally, we're going to divide by a this time. All right, so we have x squared plus b over a x equals negative c over a. Okay, then what? What was your next step? Your b over 2. So my b value in this case is actually b over a. And then I have to divide it by 2. So where's the 2 go? Yeah, it goes underneath here. I'm dividing it by 2. Okay, and then we square. All right, we did b divided by 2, and then we square it. All right, so b squared is b squared. What's 2a squared? 4a squared. And that's what we add to both sides. You guys with me so far? We just moved the c value, divide by a, and then we did our b over 2 squared. I know it looks a little funky because we have all letters in there. I know that kind of throws you. All right, but again, we're following that process of completing the square. What would be your next step in completing the square? The factoring. So how would this factor? Now, here's where I typically lose students because their fraction skills aren't the best. When you add and subtract fractions together, what must you have? Common denominators. So in order for me to put these two things together, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite them over here. What would the common denominator be? 4a squared. I can't make them smaller, but I can make them bigger. All right, so this one, how do I make a 4a squared? What do you multiply it by? 4. I can't just multiply by a square. 4a. So I multiply the top by 4a. So we have negative 4ac. And this one, I don't have to change anything. All right, so if I put my fractions together, common denominator of 4a squared. And those are not terms, so I'm just going to rewrite that as b squared minus 4ac. Right, there's the b squared minus 4ac. Putting all that together. A lot of times it is. Not having numbers throws people. All right, what would be your next step after you factored and added the other side? Square root. And we do top, bottom, separate. So x plus b over 2a equals the top. That's held together with subtraction, so I actually can't break that apart. So there's nothing I can do with the top. Square root of 4a squared, 2a. No squared, because square root of a squared is just a. And then to get x by itself, we're going to move this over here. So we get x equals, when this moves over, it becomes negative b over 2a plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And if they both have the same denominator, can I write it all over 1? Yeah, I can. So I can write all of this over 2a. So negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. There's your quadratic formula. I wanted to show you where it came from. It's not something that somebody, I told you I was showing it to you for that reason. Yeah, I told you I wanted to show you the why. Right? That's where it came from. So really, the quadratic formula is, all you've really done is completed the square. Was it a lot of extra work? Was it just completing the square? I mean, you had a lot of variables in there, so you had to deal with stuff. So really, the quadratic formula is you completing the square on every single problem. That's just the shortcut. The quadratic formula. Because I'm not going to ask you to do all this. You can just use this and plug in the numbers for A, B, and C. I showed you where it came from. I'm not going to ask you to do that for me. I wanted to show you. That's why I said you don't have to write it down if you don't want to. You have to memorize the formula. You have to memorize it. You have to memorize it. It's okay. We'll have time. I'll play a lot of annoying songs to make you remember it. Cool? Sure. Was it what? Mm-hmm. Yep, always.
He's not gonna play the song in there. I got this. Y'all got this.
All right. So on your yellow sheet, let's start there. Yellow sheets, quadratic formula, your last column. First thing I want you to write down is the quadratic formula. Okay, right up here at the top. Make sure you write it down correctly. Notice where the fraction bar is. Everything on the top has the fraction bar going underneath it. If you do not write your fraction bar underneath the whole thing, it is wrong. Bless you. Okay, so make sure you jot it down. Please write it down correctly. There's nothing worse than you wrote it down wrong, so then you constantly use it wrong. I've seen that happen. It's terrible. If you want to sing, I could play the song again if you'd like. Oh, I've done it before. All right. After you write down the formula on your page, please write down underneath there, set equal to 0 first, then plug in values for A, B, C. Okay, so we set our equations equal to 0. We can plug in our values for A, B, and C into our formula. Okay. After you're plugging in values for A, B, and C, you want to simplify your radical. was hoping for. All right, simplify your radical. And then simplify entire fraction. And it might not make sense right now, but it will later. All three numbers. He's a history teacher. Why are you talking about Mr. Harms? So does Mr. Carpenter, phys ed teacher. Health and PE. Yeah, he's in a band too. He plays all the time. Yes, that's a turtle dog. All right, so everyone needs to have a calculator out. I don't care which calculator you're using. Right, you can't always. All right, now a couple things I just noticed from the girls in the back, and I know it's happening for lots of classes and lots of things. I assign you a number. Why do I assign you a number?
So in case something happens or you do something wrong,
Big part of it. And what did I see from the girls back there? What did they all just do? They grabbed the bottom row, not your number. Guys, I assigned you numbers for a reason, okay? If something happens, yeah, you are responsible. So if somebody else is using your number and they damage it, you know, got to make sure you're using it. You have to report in. That way, if you see something wrong, tell me right away. If you don't say anything, the class goes to the next class, and like, this happened, I'm like, must have happened during A block.
Yeah, somebody put mine, that's ridiculous.
Isn't it?
that makes me so mad.
All right. Here we go, guys. So x squared plus 3x equals 2. First thing says set equal to 0 first. Okay? So we need to subtract the 2 back over. So x squared plus 3x minus 2 equals 0. I know. Guys, go look back real quick at your yellow sheet. Factoring, you set equal to 0 first. Square root and completing the square, you do not set equal to 0. You're always moving stuff to the other side. And now we're back to quadratic formula where we're setting equal to 0 again. Okay? So you have to keep track of which methods you set equal to 0 and which ones you don't. No, you cannot. No. So what's your A value? 1. B value? C value? -2. Don't forget your sign. So it's a -2. Okay, the reason it has to be set equal to 0 is it has to be in standard form. AX squared plus BX plus C. That way we know what our A, B, and our C are. Okay? Yep, we're going to plug it in. Now, nice and slow and careful. I want to make sure we don't make a couple mistakes here. Okay? So it's x equals, because we are solving for x here, negative b would be what? -3, right? It's kind of like saying the opposite of b. So -3 plus or minus square root. Make sure your radical is long enough. If your radical does not cover all the numbers that are supposed to be in there, it is wrong. It means something very different in math. All right. B squared, I'm going to take whatever my B value is. I'm going to put it in parentheses, squared. Yes. Yes. Because if that's a negative number and it's not in parentheses, it's going to be wrong. Do me a favor and write all of this down like I've asked you to. Humor me, okay? I have rhyme and reason for my madness. 3 squared minus 4, parenthesis, my A, which was 1, parenthesis, my C, -2, all over. Make sure that fraction bar goes underneath the entire thing. 2 times A, which is 1. Guys, I want to see what numbers you're plugging in, because when I'm grading this, if you miss it and I don't see what you plugged in, I have no idea what you did wrong. Like, were you close and maybe you put in B where it should have been A, or did you just not have any idea what you were doing? Okay, so I need to see things. The whole part about the B squared, most students will mess up right there. If you don't put that number in parentheses and it happens to be negative, everything's wrong. Everything. Okay, so that's why I always write it down, put the parentheses around it. I go one step at a time. Noah? Noah? Next step, Noah. We're not just using, you don't like to write things down. You will write this entire thing down. Do you understand me? That's what I thought. All right, your next step is to simplify your radical. So I have -3 plus or minus radical. This is where your calculator comes in. Do not, are we clear? Do not type in the radical sign. I just want you to type in 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times -2. Go ahead and use your parentheses. Type it in just the way we wrote it to make sure we don't mess up signs somewhere along the way. You should get 17. Double check, make sure you get 17. Because I'm just figuring out what's under the radical. If you had typed in the radical and all of that, it would have given you a decimal, and we don't want that. If you got 72, you hit a minus or a negative sign here as opposed to a minus sign. That's a subtraction sign. Because otherwise your calculator is multiplying all of it together, and you don't want it to do that. Okay? So make sure you make a note. This sign right here has to be a minus, not a negative. There we go. And that's all over 2 times 1, which is 2. Trey? It depends on your math skills. Me personally, I do it in my head. Okay? It's just a matter of how well your mental math skills and your order of operations. So we're still on the simplify the radical step. So I simplified it to here. Can I do a factor tree on 17? No, so there's nothing else I can do. Next is to simplify your entire fraction. And I wrote all 3 numbers. If you're going to simplify like 2/4 would make 1/2, right? We simplify fractions. You'd have to do the number here, the number in front of the radical, and the number on the bottom. Those are the 3 numbers I'm referring to. So can I divide all of those by something? No. So I'm done. I just solved that equation right there for x that fast. Quadratic formula. The beautiful thing about the quadratic formula, where like factoring, does everything factor? No. Square root method, can I use that on everything? No, it has to be missing the bx. Completing the square, can I use that on everything? No, you need a b value. Quadratic formula. Everything. Works on everything. That's the beautiful one. Now, some students will ask, well, if I can use it on everything, why do I need the other methods? Is this always the fastest method? No, it's not. It does always work, but it's not always the fastest method. Why? As we get into the next chapter, you'll see why you necessarily won't want to use that method every time, because it can be time consuming, depending on the problem. My dog actually has that costume, by the way.
Jackson dog is so legit, I'm not kidding.
I have a Shih Tzu. I showed you a picture on the first day of school of my dog. Because on that teacher test, I asked you, am I a dog person or a cat person? And then I showed you a picture of my dog. That's not my fault. I showed it. All right, here we go. Guys, what's my first step? Good, 4 to the other side. 2x squared minus x minus 4 equals 0. Okay, what's your a value? B? -1. Don't forget the signs. And C? -4. Good. All right, so x equals, we're going to actually plug stuff in now. Negative b would be what? 1 plus or minus square root, write it all down, b squared, so you're going to write in parentheses -1 squared, minus 4, parenthesis, my a is 2, parenthesis, my c, -4, all over 2 times my a, which is 2. All right, so first step, really, after you set equal to 0, is you're just plugging numbers in. What are you going to do next? Most of you will grab your calculator. Tell me what's underneath my radical. Do not push the radical button. should be 33. All right, can I do a factor tree on 33? I do a factor tree and I get 3 and 11. No pairs. All right, can I divide all three numbers? 1, 1, and 4. Can I divide them all by anything? No. So I'm done. So these first ones, not so bad, right? Because have we simplified anything yet? No, we haven't. But how are we feeling about the actual use of the formula? All right, take a look here. X squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 0.
Oh, it's already set up.
Good. It's already set up equal to 0, which makes me happy. Good. 1, 6, and 9, your A, B, and your C. So x equals negative b, negative 6, plus or minus square root b squared, 6 squared, minus 4 times 1 times 9 all over 2 times 1. Whoa. You got nothing? It is 0. So negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 0 all over 2. Can I simplify the square root of 0? What's the square root of 0? It's 0. So x equals negative 6 plus or minus 0 over 2. If I don't have a radical, can I keep going? Yeah, remember with completing the square, if there was no radical, you actually went further and told me the answers. Same idea here. So then x equals, what is negative 6 plus 0 divided by 2? Negative 3. What is negative 6 minus 0? Negative 6 divided by 2. Negative 3 again. We did negative 6 plus 0 is negative 3, or negative 6 divided by 2, negative 3. Negative 6 minus 0 divided by 2. All right? So real quick on this one, since I got a nice pretty answer, what's that mean about the original problem? It was factorable. Nice try. It was factorable. Yeah, so you could have factored that one. You guys want to try this one on your own? Okay. All right, guys. What's the first thing we have to do with it? Good. We got to set it equal to 0. Bless you. Okay. Once we set it equal to 0, what's your A, your B, and your C? Good. All right. So then we got x equals negative B, negative 4. 4 squared minus 4 times my A times my C all over 2 times A. All right, so double check. Make sure you at least started correctly. If you plug the wrong numbers in there, you're in trouble. So negative 4 plus or minus square root of 0 over 2. What's the square root of 0? So x equals negative 4 plus or minus 0 over 2. Do some mental math. Yeah.
Like if we get x equals negative 4 and the radical 0, we can just go right to the answer.
Sure. All right. Questions on this one before we take a little break, and then we'll come back and finish the rest of these up. Here we go. Guys, let's finish this up. I know, he looks awesome, doesn't he? All right, so this problem, already set equal to 0. What's your A, B, and C? All right, so here we go. X equals negative B, be negative 4, plus or minus square root B squared, 4 squared, minus 4 times A times C, all over 2 times A. All right, so plug all your numbers in, and then grab your calculator and see what's underneath there. 28.
How come I never get time to punch this in?
She ain't chill.
All right. Can I can do a factor tree there.
28.
Here, I'll even do the factor tree for you. So 2 and 14, 2 and 7. So we get 2 radical 7 all over 2. So all right, there's one we haven't seen yet where we actually could factor tree the radical. Now, that last step said you need to be able to divide all 3 numbers. Can I divide all 3? Yes. Look at this. Negative 4, 2, and 2 can all be divided by 2. I can't touch what's under the radical. But I can do, it's being multiplied, so I can actually touch that number. So if I can divide all of these by 2, we get negative 2 plus or minus, do I have to write the 1? No. So 1 radical 7, I don't have to write it. I don't need the 1 underneath? No, I do not. Just confirming, yes or no.
No, that's going to be your new lid for the radical. Under the C. The 7 is under the C. And you can't get under C without that in here. It's too complicated. It's way too complicated. I'm not a student.
Guys, take it down a notch. All right. So this one, what's your A, B, and C? All right, so then we need to plug the numbers in. So x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over times 19, 2a. So my numbers got a little bigger in this one, yes? It's all right. We can use a calculator. 272. You guys confirm? All over 38. Okay, can I factor tree that? Yeah, let's factor tree that. What do you want to factor tree that with? 2 and 136. 136? 2 and 2 and 68. 68? 34? 17? No. Good. Pair of 2's. Pair of 2's, which gives me 4. So x equals negative 14 plus or minus. This will turn into 4 radical 17 all over 38.
Hey, we can divide.
Okay. When I go to simplify, you guys, I need you to stick this in your head. I need all 3 numbers can be divided by 2. So x equals negative 14 divided by 2 plus or minus 4 divided by 2, radical 17, all over 38 divided by 2, 19. So you can see this formula, it's not bad to use, but could it take you some time to simplify? Yeah. Some other methods might be faster depending on what the problem is. Sometimes it's definitely the fastest. Just depends. No?
So this works for everything, right?
Yep.
If we use this on that test, 100%
You will fail the test.
Because it'll probably tell you which one you have to use.
Yeah.
Except the last.
Otherwise, if that was the case, I would just never teach you anything else. Yeah, no, your test will be separated as in, okay, here's problem, solve these by factoring, solve these using square root method, solve these by completing the square, solve these with quadratic formula. And then the last page is kind of a surprise me. You have to use each method once, but otherwise you could use whatever you want. Which honestly is the hardest page because you have to determine which ones you can use which methods with. And we will spend numerous days working on that. Okay? Yeah, we'll see. We'll kind of see how things fall. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'll spend numerous days working on reviewing. All right. All right, so what are we doing next on this? Good. Subtract the 15. So 4x squared plus 7x minus 15 equals 0. I would like you to, so we don't mess up things. If you write that off to the side, but after a while I stopped writing that, so that's, if you want to, that's fine. So what's your A, B, and C?
A is 4, B is 7, C is
Negative 15. Good. Alright, so x equals this formula. Negative b plus or minus square root 7 squared minus 4 times c a times c all over 2 times a. You're doubting yourself, huh? What'd you have under there? What'd you have on there? Under the radical? What'd you get? 289. All over 8. Square root of 289. Can I do anything with that? That's 17. It is perfect. So negative 7 plus or minus 17 over 8. It's perfect. Hey, look, if I have something with no radical, what should I do? Yeah, finish that. Keep going. All right. So, couple options here for you guys. One, calculator-dependent people, please be careful how you're typing this in. Negative 7 plus 17, 10. I'm going to do this in 2 steps here. So 10 over 8, which would be 5 over 4. If you type in your calculator, that's fine. Just make sure you hit equals before you divide it by 8. Okay? And then negative 7 minus 17, negative 24 over 8, negative 3. So if you don't have a radical, make sure you go that one step further. Actually, put your numbers together. Tell me what your answers are. How are we feeling with all this so far? You've moved on. You're no longer in geometry now. Last problem for the day. Yep, you want to try it on your own? All right, on your own. Okay, so we have to set it equal to 0. So negative 8x squared minus 18x minus 3 equals 0. So A is negative 8, B is negative 18, C is negative 3. All right, so plugging into our formula, x equals negative b, so it makes that positive 18, square root b squared. All right, be careful there. Minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Okay? Okay, from there, 18 plus or minus square root of, I believe it was 228 over negative 16. Factor tree. So what is that? 2 and 114, 2 and 57, and 3 and 19, which really doesn't get me anything else. So we get 18 plus or minus 2, 57. And it looked like most of you recognized all 3 numbers can be divided by 2. So 18, I didn't actually divide. 9 plus or minus square root of 57 all over negative 8, which most of you did just fine. But I have a problem. Can't have a negative on the bottom. As far as having all my A, B, and my C negatives, it doesn't matter. Can I divide all of these numbers by negative 1? Yeah. Right? So right here, I can look at, there's actually a 1 here. All of these, I can divide them by negative 1. So what's 9 divided by negative 1? Negative 9. Plus or minus. Do I put another negative? Do you see how you already have 1 plus and 1 minus? I already got my signs covered. It doesn't really matter. I already got them both. Who cares, right? Don't matter. All over. And I changed that to a positive 8. Now we're good. Just can't leave the negative on the bottom. Put it back on top. Yeah.
Would you in that plus, if you add in the 8
Yeah.
I don't understand why you couldn't just say. Because like it's over -16, what did you have to divide by now?
It'd be the same thing if I gave you 18 over -16 as a fraction. Wouldn't you simplify those? It's the same idea. I'm just simplifying a fraction. That's all I'm doing.